I can ask Shad Faulkner to lead us in prayer.
Let's all bow and pray. Lord, we're thankful for another day that you have given us and allowed us to enjoy. Lord, we're thankful for the beauty that we're able to see in it. Lord, we're thankful for your goodness. We're thankful for your mercy, Lord, and we thank you, God, that even before we bowed our heads, you knew exactly what we stood in need of. Lord, we pray, God, that you would provide that for us today. Lord, I pray, God, for this meeting. Before we get into it, Lord, I pray that you would be with each and every one that's a part of it. Lord, I pray that you would grant the wisdom and the knowledge that is needed to conduct business in a orderly fashion. And Lord, I pray that you would take issues that are coming up before us. And Lord, I pray that your will would be done in each and every one of those things. Lord, now I thank you, God, again for all the blessings. Lord, if there be those around us who have those that are loved ones that are sick and afflicted, Lord, I pray that you would be with them and comfort. Even if there are those that have lost loved ones, Lord, I pray that you would be with those and comfort them as well. Guide us in all things we do, and all these things we carefully ask in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Now if we can pledge allegiance to the flag. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Have a motion to adopt the agenda.
Are we, is anybody making any changes? Is it ready? Then, yeah. I'll make a motion, we adopt the agenda as presented.
I second it.
Please vote. And then we need to adopt the meeting minutes from the special called meeting on January the 2nd. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Second it.
Please vote. And item 6, new business. We need to appoint a mayor pro tem for 2018. It's my recommendation to the council that we appoint Lewis Ledbetter, as he's the senior councilman of the group.
I second that.
Well,
I have a motion.
You gonna make, I motion that to appoint Lewis Ledbetter to Mayor Pro Tem.
Second.
I second.
Second. Please vote. And number 2, meetings and procedure ordinance. This is in your packet. This is to set up for work sessions on the first Tuesday of each month. Do we have any discussion?
Is the work session, they're gonna be at 6 o'clock as well?
6 o'clock at City Hall, first Tuesday of each month.
that was the one thing, I think we need to change.
Need to strike where it says
Holding it in,
at City Hall
Right.
instead of in the council chambers.
In the
That way
yeah.
we can have it in a meeting room.
That way it can be downstairs in the meeting room,
Yes, sir.
instead of out here and very formal. So,
Mr. Mayor, members of council, the mayor and I discussed this ahead of time, and this room really isn't conducive to a work session because you don't really have a table here. So in your ordinance as drafted, it says that you would meet at 6 p.m. on the first Tuesday for your work session in council chambers, and we just like to strike the words "in council chambers" so that your ordinance would read that you'd meet the first Tuesday of each month at 6 p.m. at City Hall. That would allow the mayor the discretion to set the meeting location wherever in City Hall would be most conducive, not only to y'all working around a table, but also to allow the public to attend. So that's the request that, we as your legal counsel would just strike those 3 words in the council chambers, and otherwise we'd request that you consider approving it.
Dana, for clarification, this is not considered technically a work session. It's a special call meeting to institute. We had to do it this way to institute
Correct.
an ordinance for a work session. But at regular work sessions, when we start doing them regularly, will we take up items for vote, or will everything be voted on at the regular meeting?
You can vote at a work session, and this ordinance specifically provides that. And part of the reasoning for that is because you may have issues that come up that require action at that point in time. You need to make a decision, and we didn't want to hamstring you by saying you couldn't vote at a work session. State law allows it, and your ordinance specifically provides it. But I think it's the mayor's intent that in general, the idea is things that aren't front burner, that we don't need to vote on, we're going to discuss at the work session, which is the first Tuesday. And that gives everybody a couple of weeks to get more information and do whatever you instruct us to do. And then at the second meeting of the month, which is the third Tuesday, that's when you're going to vote. And that's what I understand the mayor's intent was.
That would be my preference too, to take up most.
It'd only
of
be
the
if we wanted to.
If we had to.
Yeah, the whole purpose is so we can get all the information.
And you will have call meetings, if it's an emergency situation, you will have call meetings that you've got to act on then.
That's correct. You still can do that. An example might be that we get a request from the county for something that they need a quick response on, or from some individual that the mayor and council has to give a quick response on. And rather than waiting 20 to 30 days to your next voting meeting, you could act on it at that work session if you, as a mayor and council, felt it was appropriate. So that's the way it's drafted. I'll be glad to answer any other questions y'all have.
So are we adopting this ordinance tonight with the change? You
That's
specify?
totally discretionary.
I mean,
with y'all, but
is that what we would be?
Yeah, let's do.
Yeah,
The request would be that you do that so that you can set up this procedure.
I know.
that's what allows us to have work sessions starting next week.
So I'll make a motion to adopt the meetings and procedures ordinance with the change recommended by council to strike council chambers. That's my motion.
Do I have a
I
second?
second it.
Please vote.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Item 3 is a request to advertise for bids the sanitation and curbside recycling. Looking over the numbers of what we're paying for trash services, I'm gonna let Phil Higgins talk to us about that.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. The purpose of this item is to go out and solicit competitive bids for the service of sanitation and curbside recycling. In your packet, you'll have a draft of a bid that, or a request for bid that I have drafted, and if you don't have any questions on, if you have any questions on that, I'll be glad to answer them now.
Do we have a contract right now?
The contract is through our demand service providers right now,
That's considered a demand service?
demand services, yes.
Aren't the demand services on the agenda to,
They are. They're an item later on the agenda where we reappoint our demand services. Demand services are basically as-needed contractors, where if something comes up in an as-needed basis where you don't really have time to go through the bid process in like an emergency situation, you can use one of those contractors without going through the bid process.
you know why they're demand services? This sanitation is demand and not professional?
It has been that way for years.
And if we put, we don't have to bid out every demand service, we can do them.
That's up to the board.
Any further discussion?
Well, what exactly are they doing, other than what exactly are we voting on tonight? What demand services?
Well, that's later on in the
Later on.
agenda. This is just saying that we're gonna request for bids for sanitation and curbside recycling.
Okay.
We're just putting it out to bid. Doesn't mean we're making a change, we're just putting it all out to bid.
Okay.
Any other questions or discussion? Do I have a motion to put it out to bid?
Motion to put sanitation and curbside recycling out to bid.
Do I have a second?
I second that.
Please vote. Thank you. Item 4 is noise ordinance.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, this is a proposal for discussion only this evening. This is a request that you look at this draft noise ordinance, which is based on the one that they have in Athens, Clark County. We would like to have some discussion and feedback from the mayor and council as to what you think about this, whether it's something that you want to do or don't want to do, how it should be changed, how it doesn't need to be changed, and it would be voted on at a subsequent meeting, not at this evening's meeting. So this is just for information only and discussion. Be glad to answer any questions y'all have at this point in time.
And as of now, we don't have a noise ordinance. People have made complaints about parties and that kind of stuff, and the police department's hands are tied in the fact that they can't really do anything about it.
Dana, do you know offhand, it says the penalty is, person violating the provisions of this section shall be punished as provided in section 111. Do you know what that is? Fine, you just lay out a fine schedule, or?
I think that's what it is. I'm not sure off the top of my head. Let me see if I can find that real quick for you.
Well, I haven't had a chance to read it anyway, and that's the type of question. I think I propose that we postpone this one to the regular meeting until we get a chance to read it and dissect it.
Yeah, and that was the whole purpose, was just that we all look at it, read it over, come up back with thoughts and all that, and we'll address it at a later time.
Yeah, I agree.
This must be just a generic noise ordinance, correct?
It's actually from Athens, Clark County.
Because you've got leaf blowers and all that within 300 feet of a residence. That would get just about everybody in my neighborhood.
Right, and I think on most of those things, it's a time sensitive. For instance, most people, it's a 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. So most people at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock at night are not using a leaf blower because it's dark and you can't see anyway. That's the idea is.
Just to stop anybody from doing anything at night.
Well, I think that in a lot of other communities, this has been used to allow the police to keep parties from taking over a neighborhood with noise. And, it's typically not something that is going to be, you're not going to have somebody using a leaf blower at 10:30 at night. You might have somebody playing very loud music out of very loud speakers and disturbing the whole neighborhood. And it's given the police a tool to be able to stop that by issuing a citation. I think the answer to your question, Councilmember Light, is that I think it refers back to a different code section which sets the fines, as you correctly said. I mean, in a worst-case scenario, it would be, the maximum allowed for a misdemeanor, which is a $1,000 fine, which would be the max. But it would typically go to, a citation would be issued, and you'd go to municipal court for a resolution of that. And again, this is just a discussion item. I want y'all to read the ordinance, think about it, decide whether you want one, how you might want to change it, or whether you want one at all. And that's the.
So do we need a motion to postpone it?
You need no motion. No action needs to be taken at this point in time. And that's why I said at the start, similar to what we'll do in a work session, if there's something that we would request or that the mayor would request you take action on, he's probably going to say that. This is an action item versus just an informational item. This is an informational item.
Then moving on to item 5, the Cumming Fair Authority.
Yes. I think the question here is, y'all had, there's been discussion as to what to do with the fair authority, whether to discontinue it, whether to establish a fair board, what the current authority should do or shouldn't do. I think those are the issues that are before you. What would be helpful to us is if you give us some direction as your council as to what you want to do, and then we could draft appropriate documentation accordingly.
It's my opinion that the Fair Authority is set up now for the city to get ownership back of the fairgrounds and all that. We would have to dissolve the Fair Authority, and that's correct?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor.
And then, you know, my recommendation would be to set up, dissolve that and set up a fair board that we would appoint members to, you know, at a later meeting, and set that up, and those people would then make recommendations to the council.
Can the fair board set up contracts with the fair people, Jimmy? Can they set up more than a one-year contract?
It would depend on what authority the fair board was given. As it currently exists, the fair authority could do that. Normally,
That's why it was set up. I'm saying, if we dissolve it and go to a fair board, can the board do the 2-year contracts or 3-year contracts that he wanted?
it's a possibility, but normally the answer would be no. The contract would have to be through the city of Cumming. And as you're aware, the city is limited, other than in a intergovernmental agreement, every contract has to be 1 year or less in duration. The law does allow automatically renewing contracts for multiple periods of time. That's in fact what's been done in the past with Jimmy Drew and Drew Exhibitions, is it'll be a 1-year deal with 5 built-in automatic renewals unless either side cancels the agreement. So a fair authority could do a 5-year contract with no cancellation. The city would only be able to do a 1-year contract with 4 additional renewals.
Have you had a chance to talk to Jimmy Drew?
I've not met him, but it doesn't limit us. What we're doing here does not limit us in being able to do that.
Well, you can only do a 1-year contract
But you can do it with automatic renewals for
if he's agreeable to that.
4 to 5 years.
And
Before, that's when they set up the board.
And it doesn't mean that we
The
can't
authority.
set up another authority structured differently than the one we have now at a later date. It doesn't stop us from doing that. My feeling on it is the fair and the fairgrounds needs to be controlled by the people that are elected. They're the ones that are accountable
That's true.
to the citizens. But a fair board, those people could serve a lifetime and make recommendations, and include the people that were instrumental in starting it. But they would just not have the ultimate authority as to what goes on. That would lie with you guys.
With the current fairground authority, I don't know what, obviously we're new, so I don't know what contracts or anything they have in place, or if they do, and if we dissolve it, what happens to any contracts that they have set up?
by operation of law, those are dissolved and revert to the city. So just like the transfer of the real property, it would revert to the city would own the real property where the fairgrounds is located. I stand to be corrected, Phil may know differently, but I don't know of any executory contracts that the fair authority has. I think most of those have been made by the city. Like, for instance, the last contract is that wrong? Yeah, so I think what has happened in the past is exactly what I've described and the mayor was talking about before. We have multi-year deals that have a 1-year opt-out. You know, you can have a 5-year deal as long as every year, at some point in the time of the year, the city has the right to opt out for the upcoming year. And that's how it's been handled in the past. And I don't believe we have any, as Phil and Dave are sitting right back here nodding their heads at me. I don't think we have any that are in the name of the fair authority. So it would be fairly simple from that perspective. I think the only thing really would be the land, as the mayor discussed earlier.
So we don't have a contract with the fair authority with Jimmy Drew.
To my knowledge, we do not. It's through the city. The city has signed that agreement.
So I see some advantages to having authorities for everything. I mean, all municipalities have authorities but there's no way to restructure the authority without first dissolving it and then restructuring, if we wanted to do that.
That's the cleanest way to do it. I guess technically you could attempt to amend the authority.
So if we dissolve tonight, we would have to then, if we wanted to do a fair board or a restructured fair authority, we could come up with ideas for those, propose those to see what the board might.
I think the idea tonight is to introduce the concept, and we would hope that if this, based on the discussion that I'm hearing, you would instruct us to draft an ordinance that would dissolve the fair authority, say what's going to happen to its assets, constitute a fair board, describe what the fair board's duties were going to be, allow the council to appoint the fair board. As the mayor said, probably some of the people that were instrumental in starting the fair would be the logical choices for the fair board, provide that that fair board would be an advisory board to the council, because again, like the mayor said, y'all are the ones that are elected, and ultimately the buck stops right here.
If you dissolve the fair authority,
Right.
why even put another board in effect? Just dissolve it.
I think that the thought process, and I don't want to speak for the mayor, was that there is a lot of history to the fair, and there's a lot of time and effort that people have put into making it what it is, but it's one event during a year-long process. We have a fairgrounds that's usable 365 days of the year, and the fair is for 10 days. There's a lot of other events that are going on there. And again, I don't want to speak for him, and I'll let him elaborate on this, but I think the thought process was, we've got a really good thing in the fair. Let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Let's use it and use that experience to the benefit of the city and its citizens and then the entire community. I think that was.
But couldn't an authority be structured to just be for the fair? Like a fair board, but an authority that has expanded powers?
It could.
And is there any, I know there's a lot of talk about other cities in the county and even consolidation with the county.
Mm-hmm.
Would an authority help at all keep the traditions for the fairgrounds? Or would any consolidation or whatever just be able to rewrite the ordinance and dissolve it anyway?
I don't think the authority makes any difference from consolidation one way or the other. Consolidation is going to be decided by the voters of the city of Cumming.
Not that way. I mean, I'm saying hypothetically, if it did happen, would an authority help protect?
You're protecting the land because it belongs to the authority.
That's correct.
But right now, the land belongs to the authority, and we can vote an ordinance to dissolve it, and it wouldn't belong to them.
True, but the county can't.
But could they if it was consolidated? Or would an authority actually protect that interest?
You're saying if the city no longer existed,
Right.
would the authority still maintain control, or would it go to?
It would go to the consolidated government in your example because the authority is formed by the city, and it is obviously, it's like a subset of the city.
Yeah, it
And so if
wouldn't
the city's
protect
gone,
It wouldn't protect it.
No.
I don't see it protecting it at all. And
Really?
Just vote on an
Okay.
ordinance
That's
like
why I
we're
wanted to
doing
keep it.
tonight.
I thought it would
Because the
protect it.
consolidated government in your hypothetical example could vote to dissolve the authority, and what happens under state laws when an authority is dissolved, whatever assets it owns go back to whatever government formed it. And so I don't think it really helps you.
Okay.
Daniel, would it be better to have what we want to do in place before we dissolve it?
Yes, sir.
Or it would be better?
Yes, so what I would ideally like to have happen is that you would ask us to at least an outline form to come up with sort of the plan. And then once you look at that plan and outline form, we would then draft an ordinance to effectuate that plan. And that's why we wanted to have this, in essence, like a work session, informational item to get your feedback tonight so that you would, hopefully say, well, here's what we like, here's what we don't like. That way we're not wasting time drafting something that's not really what the council wants. So, I mean, I think that at the end of the day, the answer to your question is yes. I'd like to see us kind of go first to an outline of what you want to achieve, and then we draft an ordinance to achieve that. And I've heard some good ideas that are very helpful to us in the drafting process this evening. But, I mean, in answer to your question, Christopher,
I didn't think so, I
Yeah.
wanted to make sure.
right,
I just thought it would help protect us from the county, but if it doesn't,
the best protection you have from consolidation is the voters of the city of Cumming.
true.
And those voters elected the 6 people that are sitting up there to represent them. And I expect that they'll continue to want you to represent them as opposed to
County.
being represented by only a county commissioner.
Well, this is just my opinion. I think the land, Mary Alice, and the fairgrounds should be with the city, like it always has been. But I do see advantages to having a tailored authority for the fair itself. So my personal opinion is to tailor a new authority to the specific needs of the fair, not necessarily the fairgrounds, whereas the fairgrounds will be operated as it always has been.
Well, the other issue and the reason for doing that, just following up on your point, is we have employees. I mean, Dave's whole department and everybody that works at the fairgrounds is a city employee. So they aren't just working for 10 days a year, they're working for 365 days of the year. And so they need to be within the chain of command of the people in his department report to him, and he reports to the city manager, and city manager reports to the 6 of y'all
Yeah.
through the mayor.
To where if you had it set up as just for the fair, then who do they answer to during that 10 days?
Right.
It makes it hard on the employees.
So I don't think it's impossible to do an authority that, in essence, advises the council related to the fair, but at the end of the day, the financial decisions related to the fair and its employees year-round need to be made by this board.
I agree, but if the authority is an authority with its expanded powers, but tailored to say for 3 weeks a year, beginning during the fair time, and it's a more of a recommending type authority that would outline a budget, an itemized budget that's presented to the council for a vote. That's something, it'd be just like a fair board, but with expanded, just like everybody's talking about a fair board with recommendations, but an expanded power to contract, if need be. That's just my thought, just because
Well,
of,
the fair authority doesn't do that now. It doesn't present a budget or anything.
I know,
Correct.
that's,
I don't reckon it does anything.
So
Does it?
I think
but that's what I'm saying, there are advantages to one if it's used, if it's done.
Differently.
so if you did an authority that could do that, so long as any contract had to be approved by the mayor and council, that would be because you can't have an authority that is obligating the financial wherewithal of the city absent the consent of the mayor and council. To me, that's the bottom line, is that y'all are responsible for the budget and for how city funds are spent. So they could enter into if you had a board or authority, they could enter into a multi-year agreement, but it would be subject to approval by the council.
What do other jurisdictions' authorities look like?
When we get it worked out, the authority can only make recommendations to the city council and mayor because they've got to issue the funds for whatever.
But I think the difference is whether it's an authority or a board. I think we're all on the same page with what the powers they should have. It's just a difference of whether it's called and has the expanded powers of an authority or just a board.
Well, let us take a look at that and come back to you at your next meeting, which is just a week away,
Yeah.
with maybe some more recommendations in that regard. And in answer to your earlier question, there are other jurisdictions in the state that have authorities. They typically are self-sustaining and not funded because they're used for other purposes throughout the years. I don't know that the Cumming Fairgrounds could be self-sustaining absent help from the city from a financial standpoint. And that's the issue. I mean, you have a lot of land and a tremendous facility there, but again, all boils back to the budget. And that's y'all's decision. So we'll take a look at whether we could restructure an authority, Christopher, as you've asked, and we'll come back to y'all with some recommendations related to a board versus an authority. I do think you're all on the same page that you want to give a board or authority some ability to make recommendations related to the conduct of the annual fair, the 10 days of the fair, to this board, and to make, recommendations both from a budget standpoint and from a programming standpoint based on their experience. And I think we can accomplish that.
So, do we need to take action on
No,
this
sir.
item then?
No, sir. This was, again, as you correctly recognized, we have a specially called meeting for the purpose of setting up, in essence, what is this quasi-work session, quasi-meeting tonight. And this was sort of an informational item that,
You're going to direct us next week whether we need an authority or a board.
we'll make a recommendation to you, and then you'll make that decision.
And then how it's set up and what it would control.
Yes, ma'am.
And that's up to us to decide
I mean,
what we wanna,
Right.
we need to let him know this is what we want, and then he can draft it up.
well, you can do that.
But it sounds like everybody kind of saying the same thing, that it's a recommending body. I think the pivotal difference is whether they have some expanded powers of an authority, and it's able to be restrictive enough to be more of a recommending body with expanded powers to contract.
And we'll take a look at that, and that should be pretty quick to be able to have a recommendation for you for next week. Again, to do this is going to require an ordinance. We wanted to get this input tonight before we started drafting on that, because, we've always had discussions with the mayor, but we need to hear from,
And a
all
lot
of
of
you.
people in the city didn't like the fact that the land was owned by the authority versus owned by the city.
Right.
And I don't think.
And that was the main problem. Well, if it doesn't protect us any, if this authority's not protecting us, then why bother with it?
And for the purpose of an authority, you could have an authority for the purpose of making long-term contracts that's made up of the current city council, and still have a fair board that would make recommendations
To the city council.
to the city council. I'm just trying to, I feel strongly that fairgrounds and that property and the fair, that the elected officials need to be the ones accountable.
I agree with the last thing you said. I don't know that you could have an authority that's made up of this group that would be any different than this group. And again, you can only do you could do a multi-year agreement as long as you have a one-year opt-out.
Right.
Or an annual opt-out. And, that's.
So we can
very
cover
common.
it, we can cover what, in essence, an authority would do without having an authority
Yes, sir.
in the contract that you write up.
That's right. That is exactly correct. And the idea of having the authority or board for their historical knowledge and seeking their recommendation and direction as to the future conduct of the fair is what I think you're trying to capture. Having the city itself own the property and control the budget, which is your responsibility. as
So what
correctly
you and the
recognized.
mayor just said, there's really not much difference in having just a board and an authority then. If we can essentially, as a council, contract similarly to what an authority can.
You can, as long as you have that one-year opt-out, or annual opt-out.
We can extend it, it's just, you can also get out of it.
And the idea is that, you have an election, somebody else, a future council may want to get out of a particular contract and enter into a different contract. So that's why state law says 1 year at a time. So,
Good. Thank you.
thank
I
you.
would be for using the people that want to stay when we do get it worked out, that wants to stay on the fair board under a different fair situation, and the people that wants to stay because them are the people that created what is there,
I agree.
And then add more to it.
and add more to it.
I think we're all in agreement
Have
on
some
that.
stand-up shows and, things that'll make money for the city of Cumming.
Yeah, it's a pivotal time and those people know how the fair works and how it needs to go, so I agree.
So what do you need, a motion to table this till the next meeting?
No, sir, there's no request for action. This was an informational item
All
to
right.
get input from y'all, which I think Kevin and I have heard loud and clear what y'all are saying, so we can be ready for the next meeting.
Well, then, on to the next item, supplemental meetings.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this is, supplemental meeting ordinance was something that we were asked to take a look at. Your charter provides that, in addition to the monies that the mayor and members of the council are paid for the service that they provide to the city by serving as members of the governing authority, you also receive, a per diem, for other meetings if they are pre-approved meetings, by the city council. The pre-approval process is something we were asked to take a look at, and we put together a resolution, and I believe that you probably all should have received it today. So I don't know if you want to look at it and make a decision next week. I mean, you can certainly make a decision whenever you're ready, but I'll tell you in short what it does. Number one, it obviously reaffirms that you get paid for your meetings when you're here. For like tonight, there's a per diem paid for tonight. There'll be a per diem paid for next week. That's what's in your charter. Then you also may serve on other boards or committees or organizations because the council puts you on them. And I keep using this example because it's so easy. Just to give you an example, Mayor Brumlow is going to be an appointee to the Georgia Mountains Regional Commission unless the council decides to appoint someone else. And the members of the Georgia Mountains Regional Commission are required once a month to travel somewhere within a 13-county area to attend a meeting. Councilman Light and I actually went to one back in December up in, I guess we were in Dillard, so we were all the way up in Raven County. So you can imagine sometimes you have to drive a long way. Your resolution that we put before you would provide for a per diem payment for that kind of a meeting because you're being directed by the council to go there. Another kind of meeting that's covered in your pre-approved resolution that we drafted would be any kind of training. If you go to training at GMA or at the GMA annual convention and you receive training while you're there directed towards your service as the mayor or member of the council, you'd get a per diem for that. And then finally, we set up some criteria to try and capture meetings that would fall within what you may want to approve without necessarily trying to get down and nail every single tiny little event in January. And based upon some input that we received, the criteria that we put out there for you to consider were, one, that the member of the council or the mayor be invited to attend in their official capacity. In other words, you're being invited to attend because you are the mayor or you're on the city council. Two, it be something where the city has some kind of an interest, whether it be something located within the city or located within the county where there's a city interest that's involved. And then three, where you actually attend and you are attending as a member of the governing authority of the city of Cumming. Those kind of events, because they're undefined, but we've set up those pre-approved criteria, which is what your charter requires, those would be then submitted to the city administrator, and if the city administrator and the mayor find that it meets the criteria, then it could be approved. Of course, if it's the mayor who is submitting for it, he wouldn't approve his own. It would be submitted to the city administrator for the city administrator and the mayor pro tem to approve. And that's your supplemental compensation meeting resolution. We did it as a resolution so that it can be reviewed on an annual basis. Your resolutions expire after a year, so it's something you can look at again in January of next year. If it's working great, renew it. If it's not working, you need to tweak it, you can certainly do that then. You can change a resolution at any point. I'm just letting you know you've got to look at it next January, and so you're going to be forced to look at it at least once a year.
And so this is just clarifying what was already an ordinance. It's clarifying what those extra meetings are.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Pre-approved meetings are covered in your charter, and we're trying to help you guys lay out the criteria needed so that we know what a pre-approved meeting is.
Any discussion? Do I hear a motion to bring it up to a vote? Do I have a motion to bring it up to a vote?
Or adopted.
To adopt it?
The resolution?
Yes.
I make a motion that we bring it up for a vote.
Have a second?
I'll second it.
Please vote. Then item 7, reappointment of professional service providers.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. This item has to do with our professional service providers that we currently have. We annually appoint those. They are, as is listed in your council packets, the city attorney, Dana Miles, city auditor, Charles Cole, city engineer, civil engineering, Andrew Lovejoy. Our street engineer is Moreland Altabelli and Associates. And Michael Delaney, we have added him to this list if it's meets your approval. He is an easement acquisition specialist. So we just seek your guidance on approval of this list.
So this is just keeping the same folks in place that we have now, going forward.
I make a motion that we reappoint them.
Second.
Please vote. Item 8, reappointment of demand service providers.
Yes, sir, as we discussed earlier, the demand service providers are more of as-needed contractors. They are folks that we can call in an emergency situation a lot of times, and if we don't have time to go through the normal bid process for a job. These are, as listed in the packet, Ralph Webb, general repair and construction, Jimmy Ray Brown, paving, concrete, street repair, Rakestraw Inc., sanitation, Townley Construction, sewer repair, Johnny Amos Pipeline, water repair, small scale, Jasper Grading Pipeline, water repair, large scale, and Amy Mize, landscape specialty, and that is for the landscaping situations in the more high-end areas where maybe specialty sod, things like that.
Same thing as the professional services, just extending who we have now for 2018.
Yeah, we need them because we've got some big lines out there. And when you need people that can get on that, like, or a lot of streets has been flooded before, Tyson Foods and Hardee's and all that. I make a motion that we do.
I'll second.
Have a second, please vote.
Well, that's just for emergencies.
Correct. Item 9, appoint city administrator. It's my recommendation to the council that we promote Phil Higgins to city administrator to take over Gerald's spot after retirement, and not fill the assistant city administrator position at this time. Is there any discussion?
I second.
I hear a motion.
I make a motion that you promote
I
Phil
second the
Higgins.
motion.
Second. Please vote.
And I apologize for my phone.
It's all right. I didn't tell you not to turn them off, did I?
Good luck, Phil. There's a long list of stuff here, and then there's a long list of duties in this
He's a
package.
good old soul. He can stand this.
I appreciate all of you.
Phil, how long have you been with the city?
Well, it'll be 29 years in June
Since you were 18?
since I was
12?
I just want to say in the meeting that I appreciate all of you. I look forward to working for you, and I just can't wait to see what the future holds for us.
And we appreciate you and look forward to,
Phil's got some good department heads, got some real good department heads in the city. And them people can make his job easy or they can make it hard. Right now, they are doing all a good job.
all right, item B, streets.
purpose of this item, Mr. Mayor, is we have several street projects that we're very likely to do in 2018 that will include resurfacing and milling. And the purpose of this is to solicit bids, competitive bids on that, on both resurfacing and milling. And they can also be bidded out separate. It doesn't have to be the same contractor, so we can look at it both ways. But these will be projects that will be paid for under SPLOST 7. So the money is there. We don't. This won't affect our operating budget in any way.
Any discussion? I hear a motion that we request bids for resurfacing and milling.
Motion.
Second.
Please vote.
Thank you.
Item C, Park and Rec, rules and regulations of meeting rooms. Good, you?
So far, so good. Dogs got off to a rough start last night.
Yeah, we did.
I noticed Kevin was a little hoarse. I didn't know if he was yelling at his TV or if he was at the game.
I guess this is a discussion of what our current rules and regulations for our rentals, rooms that we have at the new recreation building. So if you've got questions, I'll try and provide the answers as best I can.
So, are we, this item's for just the amount of what our rental rates are? Is that, or is it just our whole, I'm confused a little bit about. Are the rental rates, okay, I'll just ask the question, are the rental rates, are they just the same as it was last year?
We've not changed anything with the rental rates. We have, they were probably priced just a little bit low to begin with because we wanted people to become aware of what we had with the facility that we were frankly growing into. It's been quite some time since we had any room in our old building because of our programming that we were able to rent out and provide. So we've had about a year and a half now booking the facility. Last year it brought us in right in the vicinity of $28,000 on booking fees alone. I feel pretty comfortable about what we are charging right now. If you compare it to Lanier Tech and the fees that they get for similar periods of time and similar occupancy, we're a great deal. Now, we're not a full-service provider like they are. We don't provide the linens. We don't provide the built-in kitchen and all that, but we can provide them a meeting space with the tables and chairs set up, and we do have the guidelines that they have to follow, the rules and regulations of meeting in our facilities. We require 25% deposit to initiate the booking. That's a security deposit, and then payment 2 weeks prior to the event itself. And then the security deposit is returned. Most people put it on a credit card. We just reverse the charges on the credit card if they leave the facility in good shape and they followed all the rules with it.
So it's still a fairly new building, so I know we're still working out, but you feel fairly comfortable at these numbers with our occupancy rates for all of last year, that we stayed pretty full and people weren't?
We're staying pretty, and people have started to find us. We're getting a wide range of rentals and bookings that we have never, quinceañeras, parties and organizations that we just really weren't expecting, but it's been good for us. We've learned and adapted, and some of the ways we thought the room was going to work to begin with, it didn't. In some ways worked exactly, and I feel good that we've grown and kind of rode with the punches with it, and I think we've got a good thing going right now. So I don't, at this point in time, I don't really believe that unless there's a change in what we're going to offer there, I don't really see a need for price restructuring.
I have a question. Can you have alcohol or beer, wine, whatever, in one of these rooms if your caterer is
No, right
licensed to have
at this point in time, it's no alcohol on the premises. And I think our initial recommendation of that was due to the fact that it's primarily a recreation facility with recreation program, children running around, until 9 o'clock at night during the week. And we tried to avoid having alcohol in our meeting rooms and our events or banquets back there at a time where we've also got our recreation activities going on.
Okay, thank you.
Is there a way,
Go ahead, and then-
is there a way where the meeting rooms are to restrict the movement from kids in the back up to the meeting room area?
Not without violating fire code.
Clear.
We had asked that option initially because, quite frankly, those rooms are only used primarily in evenings. Sometimes you have luncheon, sometimes you have rotaries that meet in the mornings and those kind of things. But we wanted to be able to basically block those rooms off from our population that are there for our recreation classes. But in order to do that, one exit is the fire escape for the other. We can't lock those doors and keep people out because of the fire code and the exits required.
What about, you think we could craft an ordinance to where, I think we're missing some opportunities with not being able to have some form of alcohol sale, or not sales,
All wedding
but
receptions and things you're missing
Yeah.
because they're going to have
political
champagne.
events, why?
And the county's found out that, the way to get around it was, the caterer has the license, so you're not really
Right.
responsible for anything. The
Right.
caterer has.
Well, and that is, and I have looked into other recreation departments surrounding us and how they deal with it. Some of them, Cherokee County, Alpharetta, have kind of done what we've done in our first year and a half with it. They just do not allow alcohol in recreation facilities. Other recreation departments have standalone facilities that do not house programming aimed at recreation, and those do provide or allow for the alcohol at events. They deal with it quite differently. Some of them require you to bid out to a caterer or a server that has the license, and that is the only person that can serve alcohol out of their facility, and they charge an additional fee for doing that. Others leave it, they don't bid it out as a single provider, but you still have to have a licensed server or pourer to be able to do it. And the explanation is that does escape the city from some liability with that. Gainesville has their civic center that is used for recreation activities and recreation programming, but they also have the banquet halls there that allow alcohol. They solve the problem by not allowing any event that's going to have alcohol in it to be conducted at the same time while there's recreation programming going on. So they kind of made it the best of both worlds. They dodged the bullets by not having alcohol there while dance classes and other classes are going on, but they do allow it during primarily the weekends, Friday nights, Saturday nights, and Sunday, when they do not have programming going on.
Greg, I'd like you to look, if everybody else is okay, I'd like to take a look at doing something like that, where if it could be scheduled during the week and other recreation things aren't going on, fine, but if it can't do it. But weekends, particularly if there's no recreation, I'd like to look at something like that.
Okay. I would probably need to get Dana, Kevin involved in what's the best way for us to eliminate the city's liability, make sure it gets forwarded on to the server or the caterer, or however we decide to set that up. And like I said, I've discussed it with 6 different recreation departments. Not one of them do it the same, other than Alpharetta and Cherokee,
I know
which
that's
just
the way
don't
the
allow
county
it.
gets around it, because our nonprofit rents the county's facilities, and the way they get around it, and we get around it as the nonprofit not being liable for it, is the caterer has the,
Right.
I
has the
think we can
licensing.
capture some missed opportunities too, if we're able to have some sort of.
Well, you're definitely missing
And Roswell dodges it.
sections.
Sorry,
Wedding
I'm-
reception.
Roswell dodges it by requiring anybody that wants to serve alcohol at one of their rentals to provide proof of $1 million liability insurance policy, which kind of eliminates a lot of groups that would
Or you
won't
can
be
make the
able to
group
rent
buy
it.
their own
Not many
liability
people are going to have
policy.
$1 million
We've had-
liability policy.
What are your thoughts on if they had an event there and there was a recreation going on at that time, if they were required to have a police officer?
Most of the
Fair.
recreation departments, whether there are recreation events going on or not, they require a security officer there if alcohol is served. It becomes one of the requirements.
What are your thoughts personally if you had a police officer present there while that was going on?
Personally,
Yeah.
I do not like the idea of events being held with alcohol while we have recreation programming aimed at younger people there. Now, during the week, we're usually there Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, till about 8:30 or 9 at night, so it kind of eliminates those.
Right.
It doesn't really affect the Friday, Saturday, and Sundays, which according to the other recreation departments around us, those are the primary dates that people are looking for bookings that want to serve alcohol anyway.
Gotcha.
So, it really doesn't seem like it's affected Gainesville at all.
Okay. I appreciate your opinion and information. Anybody else got any other questions?
Yeah, how are you getting the word out that we offer this?
Well, it's primarily, we started out word of mouth, just letting people know, having events, and then letting the word get out from there. We did that on purpose, just to give us a chance to grow into it. We didn't really know how big a monster it was going to turn into, and so it kind of let us get our feet wet, and now the more bookings we have, every time we have a big event there, we get 2 or 3 bookings out of it from people that say, oh, we didn't realize you had it, or we're glad you had it, have this now, and, within a week or 2, you've got a couple more bookings. So the month of November and December, we stayed slammed every weekend. A lot of days, I think we went through about a 6-day period where we had a booking every day, from Christmas breakfast to luncheons to, whatever going on from one time to the next. It's kind of slowed down in January, but everything does after the holidays, but we do expect it to pick back up. But we are beginning to get bookings, multiple bookings, where they book 6 times, once a month for 6 months in a row. So, it may get to the point that we feel we need to advertise it and promote it a little bit more, but we're still operating it with the same recreation staff that we had. If we really develop it into being something bigger and more, then I'm going to have to come back before y'all and discuss the possibility of staffing it a little bit more.
In the kitchen, it's a full-blown kitchen.
No, sir, it's a catering kitchen.
Okay.
Now, it's just for the caterers to come in, have their food, and serve it out of. It does have a hood in it, so in the future, if anybody wanted to put the ability to cook in there, you could. A lot of different opinions about that. Again, going back to a liability, who's going to be allowed to use it, because you don't want somebody back there blowing a hole in your brand new building.
Is there a washer dryer there?
There's a washer dryer there. There's not a dish, there's a dish sink, but we do not have a dishwashing apparatus back there.
So if somebody had plates that they wanted to wash, plates and forks and.
We've got a sink for them to wash them in. Most caterers will bring their plates and their food in, and then they will take them back to their restaurant to wash and clean. They do not wash them on site and leave them overnight or anything like that. They deliver them, meals function is handled, and then they go back to the restaurant after the function's over.
Right. But our dish sink, it would be adequate to do that, to wash them on site?
Depends on how big a banquet you've
I
had.
got you.
If you've had a banquet with 75, 80 people, yeah. If you've had a banquet with 300 people, no, sir, it would not.
It was my understanding, Lanier Tech, they rent the plates and
Oh, yeah, that. no, they're-
silverware and stuff.
Right,
that
they
might
rent
be-
every, I mean, they're a full-service deal down there. You can go down there and, table linens, plates.
But they're not a rec facility,
Utensils.
but they don't have rec.
No, they don't have, I mean, they're full, that's their job, that's what they do. They've also got, about as big a space as we have for meeting to store all that,
Right.
that stuff down there. We would not have we do not currently have a location in the building where we can store the plates and glasses and cups and linens and everything like that.
Gotcha. Any other questions?
Bob, is there an ice machine?
We do have an ice machine, yes, sir.
That comes with the rental?
Right, rental is your use of the room, full setup. You tell us how you want it set up, whether it's banquet tables, meeting tables, theater style. We set everything up for you, and you've got access to the catering kitchen if you need it. Everything's ready. We also have an audio video system that is an extra fee if you want to use that, but we've got 2 projector screens that drop down out of the ground, or drop down out of the ceiling, and you can make your PowerPoint presentation, you can show a video, whatever you want to with it. That's an additional fee.
Well, I'd like to request that you work with these guys, the council, to see if you can come up with a way to capture some events that may want to serve alcohol with all the protections and homeliness that we need at a rec center.
I can do that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Next item is D, planning and zoning, code enforcement ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. We have prepared, this is a draft for you folks to consider and think about in terms of an ordinance for a code enforcement board as well as a code enforcement officer. It's been a draft, it's actually been around for a while. If you actually look to the back, you can see that we've got different people on there for signature that are actually sitting up here right now. I mean, this has been something we've been looking at for almost a year now. Here's the biggest question that we have for you when you get a chance to look at this is, well, let me back up. John Kaufman, who is here tonight and is with the Planning and Zoning Department, is a certified code enforcement officer. But he cannot issue code enforcement citations for things like building code violations, stormwater violations, that sort of thing, until we pass a code enforcement ordinance. He's been waiting for us to take some kind of an action on this for a while now, and so that's what this ordinance does. The big question is, do you want to have a code enforcement board? As drafted, this was the Cadillac version of this. We included everything you could possibly include in a code enforcement ordinance. You have in this ordinance a code enforcement board that was made up of 3 people, and they would have subpoena powers, and they'll have the power to hear violation allegations, basically conduct small trials for code enforcement issues, as opposed to it going directly to court. That's the other option. You don't have a code enforcement board, and Officer Kaufman, all of his code enforcement violations are sent to municipal court where Judge Neville could hear them and address them. There are benefits and detriments to both. The benefits of a code enforcement board, they can be really flexible in trying to work out resolutions and coming up with alternate ways to remedy an issue. The benefits to having the municipal court do it is you've got one judge who's going to handle all of your ordinance issues in the city of Cumming, because Judge Neville will hear all the others anyway. And the other benefit is you don't add a layer of government. You avoid that. I guess the final benefit to having not having a code enforcement board is your ordinance goes from, goes from 8 pages probably down to about 2. It's a lot more simple process. But that's the issue assuming you want to let Officer Kaufman issue the citations that he's gone to the classes and taken the tests and he's ready to do, then the real question is just at that point, do you want to have his violations returned to municipal court or to a code enforcement board? Be happy to answer any questions you
The
have.
code enforcement board would be volunteer, right?
Well, not exactly. When you establish a code enforcement board, state law requires that you pay them. The code enforcement board would be people who you would select. There have been different things kicked around. You could pick 3 people. You could have an existing board, like your planning board, just serve as your code enforcement board, but you gotta pay them, and you'll pay them $75 for every meeting, that they have. So not exactly volunteer. You might call $75 volunteer.
Suggest.
I'm sorry?
Which would you suggest?
For the sake of simplicity, for the sake of simplicity, I would probably go with just returning all of them to municipal court. For the simple fact that that's where every other ordinance is going to be heard. It avoids having another layer of government hearing those issues. Judge Neville runs a really tight municipal court. They've already got their subpoena powers set up, and how they do their cases, and they bring in evidence, and they bring in witnesses, and they do trials down there. It'll be a whole new undertaking for a code enforcement board. Now, I will say this, if you ever got to the point in the city of Cumming where we're doing so much development and we're having so many code enforcement issues, you might then want to look at doing something different if it becomes too big of a burden on the municipal court, or if you find that you need more creativity in how you work with builders and developers.
Is there a big cost difference, of cost benefit or cost detriment to the city between the two?
I think that doing it through municipal court is probably less expensive. You're not gonna pay, I don't think you'll pay
It's like
anything.
$225 every time they met.
Yeah, but you gotta balance that with the cost of more court time, I mean, right?
We've only had one violation that I'm aware of in the past, how many did you say? We had that one violation, two. So this is more of a concern of, and now I'll say this, once Officer Kaufman is able to actually start issuing citations, I do think that will go up. Sure. Because right now, those have to be issued by the police department. So there's an issue there. It's kind of hard for me to tell you, though, how big of a cost it's going to be until we see how many tickets or citations they'll be issuing.
John, do you have an opinion?
I think our initial thought with the idea of the board was to be able to avoid, unless the issue became serious enough and numerical, to municipal court and put it under a criminal umbrella, was to maybe have the board act as a buffer between civil violation and something as serious as a court issue. But like Mr. Kyle said, there's give and take there. It will cause a little more complication in the process. On the other hand, it would keep simple things from like someone who's got a trash pile up outside their house and kind of make it all the way to a criminal court, following the court system. It's it's a decision that just has to be made, and until we get into it and actually do it, we're not 100% sure which way would be best. Keep some things out of order, which is
What do y'all wanna,
Kind of like Kevin had said, maybe it's best if we go through municipal court to begin with, and then if it becomes an issue, then we could address it at that time. Because you don't know. We don't know. Nobody knows.
The board will grow old waiting on something to do.
Right. I mean, you don't know.
I agree with that. And while it's minimal too, I think
Yeah.
handling an
And
already
then later on, you
established
might do
system.
something different, but right now municipal court.
All right, so I'll take that as direction to prepare the ordinance that takes out the code enforcement board, just focuses on the code enforcement officer, and we'll bring that back to you for consideration for a vote.
Thank you.
Everybody good with that?
Yep.
Next is item E, utilities request for condemnation, Canton Highway.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, as you may know, we're installing a 36-inch water line along Highway 20, and we have obtained all the easements except for one, and I have some pictures if you want to look at them so you can kind of get a perspective of where this easement is located. And all right. Sometimes it's hard to find where the light switches are. Yeah, no, we can see. All right, so along Highway 20, the city is currently, the Department of Utilities, installing a 36-inch water main. The water main is to be laid along Webb Street and then take a turn to the south on Highway 20. And if you look at the map on the left, you'll see Samaritan Drive, and just to the north of Samaritan Drive is, or just to the west of Samaritan Drive is the old Victory Baptist Church. And then next to it is the property in question, and then the next property up is the old Ramey's department store. We've worked with this property owner, Cobra Properties, and have attempted to negotiate an easement and have not been able to obtain the easement. So the Department of Utilities is asking that the mayor and council vote to allow the city attorney to either negotiate an easement or to move towards condemnation to obtain the easement. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Do we already have an appraisal?
We don't have an appraisal. That would be part of what we're asking the mayor and council to allow us to do. If we move into the condemnation phase, of course, we'll need to get an actual survey of the property and also an actual appraisal. But we're always hopeful that we can work out easements before we actually move to the condemnation process.
This easement's going through their driveway, through their parking lot, right?
Yes, ma'am, and what we do, we get a 10-foot easement right outside of the state or the county right-of-way. And the reason for that, it's like an insurance policy. This 36-inch line is an expensive piece of infrastructure that's going to be put into the ground. And as we all know, Highway 20 is slated to be widened to 6 lanes in short order. Once that process begins, that the state widens Highway 20, they will be obtaining more property, they'll be obtaining more right-of-way. And once they obtain the right-of-way, if we have an easement there with our water line in it, then they have to pay for the water line to obtain the right-of-way. So we've had this happen before. When the state widened Highway 20 going towards the Chattahoochee River, we had some water line and sewer lines and easements, and the state of Georgia had to pay us for the water line when they widened the road on top of our easement. So it's a good insurance policy for the city and a good policy for us to have in place, in my opinion.
Any other questions?
I'll make a motion to approve the request to move forward with potential condemnation if negotiations fail.
A second.
Please vote. Item 2, fee chart approval.
Yes, Mayor and Council, this fee chart that we have, if you look on your monitor, is an existing fee chart. We're not asking to increase any of the prices. These are like water bills, sewer bills. Also included are the connection fees. For example, if you buy a water meter, you're going to pay $1,200 in most cases. However, there's an area that's high in elevation on Sawney Mountain, and in those areas, we charge $62.50 to hook on to the city's water system. The reason for that is that we have to put more money into the infrastructure to pump the water up Sawney Mountain, and also we have to install a water tank up on the mountain for each subdivision. We don't put a big water tank up there because the water lines would have to be, really long around the peripheral of the mountain. So we've established a higher elevation service fee for water service. Also, there are different sewer connection fees in different areas of our water and sewer service area. For example, to the north, the sewer connection fee is $6,250. That's mainly because the infrastructure is really undeveloped up that far in our service area. You'll see in the yellow, that's closer to downtown Cumming. The sewer capacity fee is $5,000. That's because the infrastructure's been in place for years, so the cost to install additional infrastructure is not as great. Far down to the Chattahoochee River, you'll see a pink shaded area, and that's the area where our sewer capacity charge is $8,250, mainly because of the distance it is away from our wastewater treatment plant and the need for larger pumps, larger pipes, larger infrastructure to convey the sewer to the wastewater treatment plant. So what we're asking tonight is for the mayor and council to approve the adoption of these two maps, the high service area water map, which is on Sawney Mountain basically, and also the map that shows by parcel how much sewer capacity cost for each of those parcels, because it's been unclear in the past. We've specified the area, but when you look at a map and you see those parcels, you're able to definitively determine what area the city charges what sewer capacity fee. So I'm just asking for you to, in essence, re-adopt the fee chart along with these maps.
And these maps would be on the website and available at utilities for people to see.
Yes, sir, that's correct, Mr. Mayor, and that helps us. You wouldn't believe how many people look at the website and glean information from the website. This is a great tool to help people make determinations, and they don't even have to call us to find out what these charges are.
This helps to clarify.
Yes, sir.
Any questions? I hear a motion that we adopt the fee chart.
I make a motion that we adopt this fee chart and the two maps with it.
You have a second?
Second.
Please vote.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
All right, item 3, request to advertise for bids, Kemp Road Sewer.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, this is a road just off of Buford Dam Road, and the majority of the homes on this road, Kemp Drive, is, these homes are on Lake Lanier. These citizens have come to us and requested that we install a low-pressure sewer system along this roadway. And what a low-pressure sewer system is like a 3-inch pipe along the roadway. And then these homes that are down closer to the lake will install a pump, and they'll pump their sewer up to the small 3-inch force main. They'll install a grinder pump. This is a grinder pump system. Some people call it a grinder system. Each one of these citizens have come to us already. There are 11, and they've paid $6,250 apiece. So we've already generated $68,750 towards this project. Now, in past years, we've moved forward with projects if the citizens come and pay over 50% of the cost of the project. The project cost is estimated at $132,675. So as you can see, the citizens got together and talked to each other into coming in and bringing more than 50% of the cost of the project. Also, I went and looked at the additional lots out there on that road, and it appears to me that we could generate up to $156,000 more dollars. So, you know, in the end, we would be generating somebody else can do the math quicker than I can, but $220,000 towards a project that would cost $132,000. So in my opinion, it's a good project for the city. In addition to that, each month, the citizens will be paying a monthly sewer bill, you know, to the city. That money can be used, you know, it offsets the operational cost of the wastewater plant and the pumps and things of that nature, but it also can be used to improve infrastructure in other areas in the future. So
Where's Kemp Road?
Kemp Road is
It's off of Buford Dam Road.
off of Buford Dam. You know where
Buford Dam.
Yeah,
Habershire
veers off to the
Marine Road
left there. Just past the gas station on top of the hill there.
Buford Dam Road, yeah.
over the top of the hill.
You go coming back down, it veers off to the left.
Yes, sir. That's right.
So those other properties, are they vacant now, or are they residents?
So the resident.
Oh, they're residences. What happens, Mayor, is that, as you probably well know, that folks go in and buy these smaller homes on lake lots, and the septic system they have for those smaller homes are adequate. But when they go in and they increase the size of the home, build a 4-story home on a little lot, they need a a better sewer system. And these folks some of them their septic tanks are in failure, so they're in need of help.
I used to live on that road,
Oh, did you?
and my septic tank was awful.
Really?
You're on a cliff, it's a pretty steep incline, and there's really nowhere for a septic tank. It's very shallow, and I agree with this 100%.
Thank you.
Are they in the city or are they, just in our service area?
Just in our service area.
Yes, sir, that's right.
I know, I didn't know where it was at.
But you will have additional customers as
Yes, ma'am.
time goes on.
As time goes on. The other thing too is that there's a rule that says if you're within 200 feet of a sewer line, the county health department will require that you hook onto the city sewer system. So what we do is we make the health department aware of the areas that we have these low-pressure sewer systems, and then they're able to communicate with the property owners that have failing septic systems that they need to contact the city and hook onto our system in the future.
Any other questions?
Do you need you're requesting to advertise for bids?
Yes, sir, that's right.
I'll make a motion to approve the request to advertise for bids.
You second it.
Please vote.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Number 4, request to advertise for bids, Sawmill Branch Sewer Line.
Mayor and Council, this was a sewer line that was constructed back in 1995 by and for the Baptist North Medical Center. It was also constructed for the benefit of the city at no cost to the city. Baptist North, along with Walmart and Home Depot, JDN Corporation, they got together and put their money together and built this gravity sewer line. As you can imagine, all of the sewer on the eastern side of 400 that we have, and you can imagine all the development, the hospital, and how much it's grown, all the BJ's, all the way, in those areas, homes, apartments. There's a lot of sewer that's been generated by all the development that's taken place over the past few years. So in addition to that, concrete manholes many times deteriorate. This sewer line's beginning to deteriorate, and in the past couple of weeks, we had a small sewer spill. It's concerning to me because components of the manhole were caving into the sewer system. And we got all that cleaned out. I think things are going okay. However, when the pumping systems come on, those manholes fill up with sewer. So we're to the point of having an emergency, and we need to move forward with design and also bidding out this project to replace the sewer line. The sewer line's been in the sewer master plan. The sewer master plan's available online if you'd like to look at it, kind of read it, kind of see what the plans are for the future. This has been one of the items that's been slated for a sewer relief line in the near future. So now we're asking if the mayor and council would allow us to move forward with the design and to bid out and to bring bids back to replace this line. It's one of the most critical lines we have, and also I believe we're at the point of having a near emergency to get this line replaced.
This is in your budget, right?
This is not in the budget that we have, this operational budget. This would be a contingency project that would come out of the contingency funds that we have.
So the estimated cost is $3 million.
Estimated cost for this project is approximately $3 million, and one of the reasons for that is because it's larger lines. It's, this line currently, I believe, is a 10 and a 12-inch line. We're going up with a larger size line.
But we have to do it, right?
Yes, ma'am. This is one of those that I'm really concerned about. That's why I brought it to you, especially in light of the last sewer spill instance that we had, and looking at those manholes and seeing them surge as the pumps.
We have that money in contingency.
Yes, ma'am, we do.
Then I make a motion that we,
What's just wondering, what's the lifespan on these sewer lines? What are they supposed to?
Well, generally, infrastructure, you assume that it lasts 20 to 25 years. And of course, as you can see,
You're right.
it's we're right there at it. It kind of depends on the type of sewer. I know, without getting too complicated, sewer gives off gas if it sits long enough. What you wind up doing many times is building a system that's too big up front, and the sewer sits there for a long period of time and kind of deteriorates and creates gases. When it finally goes downstream, it's got all this sewer gas that's corrosive in it. You do that, it's kind of like planning for the future. And that's what happened here initially. Now, all the growth has come, and all that sewer gas had eaten some of the concrete manholes out. Now we've got such a large flow that it's causing some problems. So I think we've gotten the use out of it. And plus, at the same time, it was a sewer line that was built for the city at no cost to the city. So
I'll make a motion to advertise for bids.
Second. Please vote. And then item 5, request to review Mobilite contract.
I'm going to defer to Kevin Talent at this time. I do have pictures.
I'll let you control the pictures. I'll explain what's going on. Mobility is a company that wants to install infrastructure in the city that will improve Wi-Fi access. Mainly, it'd be like the Wi-Fi, not Wi-Fi, but data coverage on your phone, that sort of thing. This is something that came up previously. We negotiated this contract, actually went back and forth with this company for quite a while, and reaching, the last time we sent terms to them, they rejected those and sent back counter terms to us. And I'll go ahead and just give you an idea of what it is we're talking about in terms of what these things are. About how big are these boxes? These boxes are probably about the size of your monitor, maybe double the size of your monitor, and they'll be attached to existing light poles in the city of Cumming, or existing utility poles in the city of Cumming, and then they act almost like a repeater to repeat the broadband signal to spread it out over a larger area so that you can keep better data coverage. And I think John may actually have some pictures.
We went through this a couple of times, a couple of months, didn't we?
We did, and I'll boil it down to where we are. The Georgia Municipal Association negotiated a master agreement that was supposed to be between mobility and between all of its members. But it's up to the individual governments to decide at the end of the day whether or not we're going to approve this. We made some changes, sent it back to mobility, and mobility gave on one of those changes and did not give on some of the others. One of the things that we did not want to lock the city into a very long agreement. These are sort of like franchise agreements, so you can do them for a longer period of time than you can in normal kinds of contracts. They wanted a 25-year agreement or a 20-year agreement. We said no, a 4-year agreement. They're willing to compromise and do a 10-year agreement, so we're not locked in forever at certain rates, but there's a pretty good length of time for them. The place where they would not budge was on the rates that were negotiated by GMA. GMA negotiated a rate for if they have to install a new pole somewhere, they will pay the city $1,350 every year for that 10-year period for every pole they need to install. The other thing that would not budge on was the cost of the locate and co-locates. So if they were to go out and put one of these wireless repeater devices on one of our, say one of our lamp posts, they will pay the city $500 a year, every year for that 10-year agreement. We had asked for double that. We asked for $1,000 a year. I think we asked for $2,000 a year on those. I spoke to the mayor earlier today, Mayor, and I was a little bit wrong about something. I told you there was only one location. There are actually 3. 2 of them, they will be installing new poles, but the new poles they're going to install are just replacing old poles that are in really bad condition. Older wooden poles, and they're going to replace those. I don't want you to get the feeling like there's going to be some kind of a huge monopole that's sticking up, 300-400 feet in the air.
There's not a pole across from the Dairy Queen, is there?
There is.
It's actually right there in that picture. Where they're talking
There
about.
is a big pole there sticking up?
See, you don't even notice it.
And didn't even have little chunks of stuff on the side of it. It looked like a tree.
The reason, the reason that John wanted to bring this back to you now, is because the General Assembly is about to get started. And when the General Assembly gets started, there are some providers who are pushing to make it so that they can come into local government areas, and if they identify a need or a hole in your wireless service, they'll be able to come in, and if the General Assembly approves this, put it up and not pay the city of Cumming anything. Mobility, on the other hand, wants to get in early, and they're willing to pay the city of Cumming something for the ability to be the one who gets in here early to put up this infrastructure. So that's why we're bringing it up now. If the city wants to go this route and wants to allow these locates and these new poles, the time to do that is now before this General Assembly session. Otherwise, we wait until after the General Assembly session is over and see what they do. And if they don't pass anything, great. If they do pass something allowing those locates, then it's an opportunity to, look at it and pass on.
So where would we be like this pole in this picture if for some reason that pole's gotta come down later?
Well, that pole does not only have, I may not have understood your question
The
correctly.
road was widened, or if there was some development out there or
It's
something.
not our pole, it's somebody else's pole, and so they'll still be responsible for moving it. We don't take any ownership of that, if that's what you were asking.
Like if something changed on that site where that pole is,
Right.
they could just relocate, it would be on them to relocate it somewhere else and they'd continue to pay us the same rate.
That's right. The contract that we do have worked out, and again, it's the GMA standard form contract. The other thing we did add that they agree with is the city gets to approve all these. So we set some parameters in there in terms of, you need to prove that there's a need in this area. You can't just come in and start throwing these locates up every single place you want to. And so we do have some control over that, but it's up to them to go with the pole. When it gets here.
So, on these poles that have to be replaced, are they paying a fee on those poles?
They're not now, they would.
They would.
If we have to approve we haven't approved a contract with them yet.
Correct. Are any
How-
other cities around, have they agreed to this? And
A lot have, but they're only going to agree to it if they get approached on it. And this is a national thing. One of the, I think when Mobility came and spoke before, they talked a lot about the city of Houston, where they have done a whole lot of these wireless computers to increase the volumes. So yes, is the answer to your question.
And your concerns, or my initial concerns, having poles and everywhere in our right of way, but I can tell you, doing a lot of work with cell towers, the big ones, all of that stuff is becoming more of a utility, and it's gonna be a matter of right before long. So I think we're wise to get something in place where we're getting something out of it before they can do it without anything.
Right.
now, are these numbers that they have, are they just strictly for Cumming, or are they pretty set the same with other cities?
It's the number that's for every city in
Okay.
Georgia. Yeah, when GMA negotiated that, that's the one thing they didn't want. And it makes sense. If they pay us more, then everybody's gonna find out they're paying more.
Right.
And they're gonna pay more across the board. So they basically said, look, we're not coming unless we stay to the same.
And
Kevin, what do you want us to do tonight?
It would be to approve the agreement with Mobility for a 10-year term at $13.50 for new poles and $500 for the co-locations.
What did we send them?
We sent them 4-year terms, $2,000 for every new pole, and,
1,000.
I'm sorry, and $1,000 for every co-location.
How many new poles?
Two new poles and one.
What is your recommendation to us?
Just what I just said.
Do it.
If we're gonna do it,
Do it.
and I think this is the time it makes sense to do it before the General Assembly goes.
There's a chance we could not get paid anything, but they'd have the right to do it and not pay us.
That's exactly right.
Now, my question is the 10-year, they were asking originally for
20
20,
or 25.
is this a contract that they're obligating to pay for that length of time, or can they opt out?
There is a provision where they can remove they can remove it, but if
Obligates
this company
us.
comes back to the city of Cumming, they've got to use this contract. In other words, if they install a co-location somewhere else that covers a broader area, they may be able to take, two more down, but wherever they want to put one up, they're in this agreement with us. There are some certain situations where they can terminate the agreement, and the city of Cumming can terminate the agreement as well. We can get out of it as well. We put that in there.
What is this company, Mobility, what's their benefit? They're charging the service providers? So there's no fees to the residents or anything like that?
No, they sell their service to other cell companies like Verizon, for example. They will be able to increase Verizon's broadband coverage using that.
So it's just it's gonna end up being a benefit to everybody.
Yeah, it'll be a
We're gonna have better
benefit,
services.
yeah.
Is there an advantage for us do you see an advantage if we were to do it for a longer period? Instead of 10 years, what they were originally asking for?
Honestly, in 10 years, I expect
Who
that
knows?
the infrastructure will be changed so much that we'll
It'll be
all
something totally
We'll all be
different.
wearing hats that get broadband coverage that way, so. I can't see.
I think 10's okay.
We have our own
I think what we were thinking with we're trying to reduce it is that in 10 years, it might be worth a lot more if we could renegotiate somehow.
That was part of it. That was part of the thought. And the other thought was, just to not lock in, even though this is more like a franchise agreement where you can go longer term, the other idea was don't lock in the people who are going to follow into something for too long.
Any other questions?
So 10 years is the lowest they'll go?
Well, no, they were wanting to go longer.
Kevin,
We were wanting to go 4 originally, so 10 is as low as they'll come down?
we don't have the agreement in our packet,
I realize that.
so I think we should, the item says to request to review mobile light contracts.
So
Maybe
why
we
don't, if
should-
you want, we can get that to you. I didn't realize that until we got here tonight, that wasn't included. We'll get the revisions in there as we're suggesting them and, get that to you for you to look at.
Why don't we do that? I think.
Then we can take it up next week.
Yeah, I think, you think?
I agree.
Yeah, everybody good with that? We'll vote on it next
Make
week.
a motion, we table it next week.
Second, please vote. And item 6, request to advertise for bids, 2 million gallon water tank.
Mayor, members of the city council, this is a very large project that we've been anticipating for several years now. This is a proposal to design and bid out a 2 million gallon water tank. And when you see the picture there on your monitor, this is traveling north on Georgia 400, and if you could look to your right, you would see North Side Forsyth Hospital. If you look to your left, you could see through the trees, you would see the Belk store. Does that make sense? Belk?
Right there by the.
So one of the things we did was we flew a balloon to try to see where, in proximity to the Georgia 400 roadway, we could actually see that tank, so the city would have the opportunity to advertise on the tank. You know, the city could say, welcome to Cumming, or we put on here Cumming Utilities. There's just a plethora of things you could do on that tank, and people would see it. It'd almost be like the gateway to Cumming, or the welcome door, part of the doorway, the gateway. And so anyway, that's a side benefit of it. But currently, the city has 3.8 million gallons of water in the air. We can treat 24 million, and a general rule of thumb is 25% of what you can treat needs to be in elevated storage. So that would equate to about 6 million gallons per day that needs to be in the air. So with the addition of the 2 million gallon tank, we would be up at 5.8 million. So we would be right in the range of what the engineering standard would say that we needed to have in the air. The demand center, as you can imagine, thinking about the hospital, thinking about Walmart, Home Depot, and all those businesses in that area, that's a really high demand center down in that area. So we've located the tank into an area where we have a lot of demand, and that's what you generally do is you put the tank in the demand center. This is one component of a larger expansion project that we're trying to accomplish. First of all, from the water treatment plant up to the tag office, we have a 36-inch line currently. We have a contractor that's in place now that's going to begin laying a 36-inch line from the tag office all the way to Webb Street. We currently have a line being placed along Webb Street and along 20. The next phase will go from about Samaritan Drive, down Kelly Mill, down Talbert, and end at Castleberry. And then the next phase will start right there at Castleberry, go down Hutchinson, and tie into this tank site. It's a lot of infrastructure improvement, but the problem that we have is that we can treat a lot of water at the treatment plant. It all goes out on the ground. We can fill up our clear wells at the treatment plant. We just don't have enough storage capacity there. We don't have enough conveyance power to poke it through the pipes and get it to the people, for lack of a better way of saying it. So this is just one component of a larger scale improvement project for our whole water system. And so we would like to request permission from the mayor and council not only to design this tank and to solidify the site for the tank, but also to go out for bids and to bring you back some bids to consider at a future council meeting.
How much land does that take, the site?
That site, I'm not sure, the engineer might tell me, quarter of an acre, possibly.
And y'all already located where you want to put it?
We have. What we've done, we've approached the Georgia Regional Transportation Authority, Greta, who owns that site. That's where the buses go and the folks park. This is their detention pond. And what we've proposed to them is to take their detention pond and build underground detention for them, and then we would be able to obtain that site. In this situation, this may be a site that we actually have to lease for 100 years, 50 years or 100 years, depending on what Greta will allow us to do. But in our opinion, this is an optimal site, unless the mayor and council has a different opinion, and we'll, of course, go in that direction. But it gets that tank close enough to 400 where you can see it, and gives you the ability for the city to advertise on the tank.
So is it your feeling that if we put their underground detention, then we're leasing it for $1 a year or something like that?
I'm not sure if we've come up to that point yet, have we?
Gotcha.
We haven't gotten to that point yet.
So we need to move forward here so we can find out where we're at.
Yes, sir, we do need to do that. Investigations and surveys and things like that.
Could I have a motion
I move that
for him to move forward?
send out, are you gonna send out bids? Is that it?
Yes, ma'am, at some point, once we determine and solidify that tank site and do some design work, then we'll go out for bids, and at a later date, it may be on maybe April or May before we come back to you
I
with
make a
actual
motion
bids.
that you continue the process.
Yes,
whatever
ma'am.
it takes.
Second motion.
Please vote. And then number 7, stormwater detention pond, the gates at Castleberry.
Mayor, I'm gonna handle that matter. The city happens to own the stormwater detention pond at the gates at Castleberry. It actually serves 2 different subdivisions, which is the exception to the rule. Normally, the subdivision homeowners association owns and keeps up the detention pond. This situation was created quite a few years ago. The 2 subdivisions that originally fed into this went through foreclosure. They've been redeveloped. They're about built out. The homeowners association is willing to take over ownership of the detention pond if the city will bring it up to the city's own code, which of course is our recommendation that we do before we turn it over to them, and they only want to accept it if they, get it already brought up to code. We've had our engineers solicit the bids for the necessary fencing to put a fence around it, as well as the clearing work that would have to be done to bring it up to our code. The lowest, we got 3 bids. The lowest of them was from Jimmy Ray Brown for $48,000. So we'd like to request a motion authorizing acceptance of that bid and moving forward with this project. It would have to come out of the contingency from the enterprise fund because it wasn't budgeted for this year. So go ahead to answer any questions.
So our low bid is $48,000, and my understanding that $16,000 of that was contributed by someone else.
That's a great point. We had previously gotten a contribution from the developer of the subdivision, as I recall, for $16,000. So that obviously lowers the net cost, down to $32,000.
32. Yeah. And this is something that in any other case, the developer would normally be responsible, but this one went through the cracks sometime in the past.
And we took the pond.
Right.
Yes, that's exactly
So
right. yes.
we need to fix it to give them the pond back, and then we're not paying 48,000 again. Fix it at some point in the future.
So it's 5 acres, 5.3 acres.
It's a large detention facility. And it, like I said, it serves 2 subdivisions. And if you go out there and look at it, you'll see it's a pretty big detention facility.
Too bad we couldn't just made that into a pond.
So they're wanting to take it over,
Oh, I
are they
don't
buying
think-
that, or are we,
I'm sorry.
are they buying that property from us, or?
We would be, in essence, conveying it to them for nothing, because then they would take over the future maintenance of it. And of course, they're willing to have that future maintenance if we just bring it up to our code or our standards to start with. Normally what happens is the city does not own, as most of you know. The developer develops it, and then at some point in time turns it over to the homeowners association.
Is there any benefit that you see or with this property with conveying over to them just the detention area? It looks like in the northern part, there's some land. Is that not viable or?
I don't believe that any of it is developable or usable. There is obviously a little bit more land there than is just in the detention pond.
I make a motion that we take it over and get it cleaned up and get it back in operation.
Give it back to him. I second.
Second.
Is she second?
Yes. Please vote. And then the next item is executive session.
Mr. Mayor, we'd like to request an executive session. It should be fairly brief for both real estate acquisition and potential litigation. I don't anticipate there would be a need for a vote when we come back.
I have a motion to go to executive session.
So moved.
Please vote. I hear a motion, we adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Please vote.